Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Development and Property, starting at 9:31. And I just want to wish everybody happy Valentine's. It's a beautiful day. I'd like to say, would it ever have been nice to have a day like this for the opening ceremonies of the Ontario Winter Games? But the Renfrew County weather did not cooperate with us. However, the games still were a significant success. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Evelyn, has roll call been taken?
Yes, and we have quorum, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, then I will need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. Moved by Councillor Lynch, seconded by Councillor Watt. Any additions, corrections, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Are there any delegations? No delegations. So before we move on to reports, I want to turn it over to Mr. Kelly because he has some information he wants to share.
It's always ominous when you say that, Chair, but thank you and good morning, everyone. So just before we get in, I'd like to take just a few minutes for a quick recognition. In late 2018, now retired Manager of Economic Development, Alistair Baird, and I had a conversation with then Killabogie Peak COO Jim Hemlin about the Ontario Winter Games. We were excited to hear more about them as really we hadn't heard about them, and they haven't been held in Eastern Ontario before, and the recognition factor was low in our area. In early 2019, we assembled all of the region's recreation directors and began to flesh out more details of what a bid would actually entail. Carmen Gould, who many of you know is our regional advisor from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. It's also gone through a number of names since 2018 and 2019, but she also played an integral role in getting us on track. In April 2019, this committee, the D&P committee, through County Council, directed staff to submit a letter of intent to the province that we'd like to host the 2022 Ontario Winter Games. Throughout 2019, folks remember Alistair, myself, and Melissa, David, Jackie Stott, who's now moved on as well, and all of our recreation directors touring representatives from the province to all of our venues and facilities across the county. Lots of miles were put on. They were absolutely impressed with the quality of our infrastructure and especially the friendliness of the community at large. Things were definitely looking up. But we still had a ton of work to do before we submitted a bid. Venues were chosen, arranged and rearranged and rearranged and rearranged again, and hotels had their rooms counted many times over, including our friends in Ottawa. Outdoor facilities were evaluated and volunteers were starting to form a group. On Tuesday, June 18th, we submitted our bid. But that didn't stop the action. We had so much more work to do to convince the province that we could pull off a successful games. In fact, we worked tirelessly on this file for month after month until finally, on December 2nd, 2020, we were awarded the games by then Minister Lisa MacLeod. Don't forget, a pandemic threw us for a loop somewhere in between. Some committees will likely remember that virtual announcement of December 15th meeting of Council when Lisa MacLeod made the announcement. Well, the rest is modern history, including the recruitment of the incredible Cindy Burwell as the Games Manager, who managed to not only arrange the 2022 Winter Games, but then a reimagined 2023 Winter Games, leading a pack of dedicated volunteers through a series of incredible challenges to host the best games ever. There's a hashtag in there somewhere. In the days to come, you'll hear more about the event as the road to wrap-up begins. Since that time, so many people have either retired or moved on from their positions they held in 2018. Even our provincial rep, Sarah, had a child. But the spirit remained alive, and I wanted to recognize them for all the work they put in. I would like to thank all the previous and current members of staff here in the D&P staff, many and mostly in the D&P department, for all of the time and effort put in the back office, as we say. But most importantly, from the moment the Ontario Winter Games Ad Hoc Committee was struck by former Warden Debbie Robinson in December 15th, 2020, made up of Councillors Bob Sweet and Brian Hunt, and of course Peter Emo. Current Warden Emo stepped up to the plate time and time again to keep things on track and to keep the team motivated. Personally, I would like to thank Warden Emo for all of his time and efforts for taking on this immensely heavy load. It certainly would have been very difficult to pull off without you and your dedication, of course, without your leadership of the volunteers and the coordination of our sponsorship partners. Warden Emo, congratulations, well done.
Thank you, and I would also like to echo those comments, and certainly in recognition of the amount of hours and coordination that it took on behalf of all of Renfrew County staff, the members of County Council who also helped wherever they could, and the significant number of community volunteers. It was certainly a successful outcome in spite of some of the weather challenges. I did get to speak to, I believe she's a staff with the Ministry of Tourism, Sport and Culture at the Petawawa presentation of the medals for kickboxing. And she said that the overwhelming comments she heard were about the friendliness, the cooperation, and the support for all of the different venues, for the events that were hosted, and for the community response, which was fantastic. So again, thank you to everybody for a job very well done. So we'll now move on to the department reports, and I'll start with Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. On page 2 of your committee package is the first item under for information is the residential market activity that you have in your attached package on page 5. And as you can see within that package, market activity for residential sales is slowing down or has slowed down compared year to year. Whether it's the normal ebb and flow of this time of year or the interest rates, it's one of these things we keep an eye on just for an economic driver and an economic kind of real property look at what's going on within our environment. So that's under information on number 1. Information number 2 is a cell gap analysis or update from the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. And as you can see in the attached, a number of cell towers have been moving into Renfrew County. We have upgrades to 1 tower, and then 1 new tower in service is another one that happened this month. And that's just an update to see the progress that we're doing with the cell gap analysis through the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. So, Chair, I'll leave it at that. And one more item, if I could, to page 12 of your committee package. It's the forestry GIS report, and what you'll see there, it says it's created by Jason Davis. By no means do I want to take action and claim for that. The forestry GIS report actually is completed and will be presented by Lacey Rose here beside me. So that will be corrected in the next DNP report. Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. So we'll go to information item number 1, the residential market activity. Questions, comments? Seeing none, item number 2 is the cell gap project update. And under resolutions, I just wanted to say that the draft budget, we are going to leave until the presentation of the other reports, because some of the background information is included in the other reports that should help hopefully answer some of the questions that might come up at the draft budget presentation. So at this point then, I believe we will move on to the Economic Development Division report.
Thank you, Chair. First up on the report for economic development is just an update on the Selling Food Forum. If you recall, this is something I reported on last month, and so we've set the date. March 21st will be the date for the in-person event, and then there will be a part 2, which is a virtual presentation on March 28th. The in-person event is being held at the Eagles Nest Arena in Eganville, and we'll cover off topics related to market channel opportunities, understanding the basics of food regulation, getting your product listed on the shelf, food labeling requirements, food trends, and commercial kitchens. And then the virtual session on March 28th will be dedicated to the topic of costing and pricing for profit. So again, this is open to food producers, suppliers, makers, anything within the food chain in Renfrew County, and is being supported by the Ontario Ministry of Agricultural, Food and Rural Affairs and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and the Renfrew County and District Health Unit. Number 2 is the 2024 Municipal Agriculture, Economic Development and Planning Forum. Renfrew County has been awarded this event to be the host in 2024. So Economic Development and Planning staff will be taking part in the learning for this year's event, which is being held in Temiskaming Shores. And then we'll head into planning for the event next year, which will be held in the fall. Date and location has yet to be set, which will be set over the course of the year. And the last item on the ACDEV report is the bioeconomy development opportunity, which is a BDO zone for Renfrew County. So this is a project that Economic Development is working with EcoStrat, a consulting firm, and it's to undertake a bioeconomy development opportunity zone rating for the region as it relates to the use of surplus roundwood and development of other innovative uses for forest-related biomass products. So this report will be a tool basically in the economic development bailiwick that we can use to help for investment attraction as it relates to the processing and uses of roundwood and biomass products. This is it's kind of a relatively new program. There has been one BDO zone rating in Canada so far, which is in Saskatchewan in Melville. And this will be the second one, which is in Renfrew County, and is being supported through the Ontario Ministry of Economic Development and Trade and the National Research Council of Canada, who's actually paying for this, and is a program that's funded through federal agencies in Canada and the United States, including Natural Resources Canada, Standards Council of Canada, and the United States Department of Energy. And this project will be completed by March 31st. And that concludes my ACDEV report.
Thank you, Ms. Marquardt. So we will go back to the information item number 1, Selling Food Forum. Comments, questions? I just wanted to say I think this is an excellent forum, and certainly recognizes in part the strength of the farming community and the added value that some of our business people in that industry are certainly making progress and bringing again focus to Renfrew County on some of the unique products and services that are being developed. Item number 2 is the Municipal Agriculture, Economic Development and Planning Forum. Comments, questions? Yes, Warden Nemo.
And thank you, Chair, and through you, congratulations. I know in speaking to the Economic Development Division, I know in speaking with the OFA Chair, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture Chair, they were, and our local reps, they were very enthusiastic about this and thought it was a good opportunity for our community and our sector for some recognition and some and some professional development, if you will. And so I'm very glad we got that. Congratulations.
I also think it's worth mentioning that the province does recognize how great Renfrew County does in hosting some of these events, and that has been proven time again that our staff and our county council does a fantastic job making sure Renfrew County doesn't get forgotten. Item number 3 is the bioeconomy development opportunity for Renfrew County. Comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Chair. To Melissa, do we not have the biomass people already in place in county? I'm thinking one gentleman was at the Queen's Park with his biomass wafer board or something that came out of Forestry?
Through you, Chair. That would be Roseburg MDF, I think you're referring to, correct? Yes. Yes, so they're our fiberboard plant. They will be part of the advisory panel that's including this. This is basically a collection of all of the biomass products that are available, that will be available globally, but are collected all together. So it's an accumulation of all of those products from all of our forestry suppliers within the region, and provides that, kind of pools it all together for all that information that can be used for investment opportunities.
Thank you. And one of the questions I had was on the trip to Toronto, recognizing all the blowdown in the Tweed area, would any of that would be marketable for a project like this?
I would actually have to defer that to our county forester, because I am not a professional in that, and I'm still learning, Chair, so that would be a question I'd have to defer to Lacey. Sorry, Lacey, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I would say absolutely. A lot of salvage has occurred this past year for material that would be still sawable, but most of the pine would have already passed, so would be stained, but could still be definitely used for bioproducts.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, then we will move to resolutions. Ms. Markwood?
No, that's on my Enterprise Renfrew County report. That's under the Enterprise Renfrew County report.
My apologies. So we will move to the Ottawa Valley Tourism Association report.
Thank you, Chair, and I will be short and sweet on this one. This is just save the date for the Tourism Conference and Annual General Meeting for the OVTA, which will be held on April 25th. Expressions of interest were issued yesterday to the OVTA membership, so if there's any communities or businesses that would like to host us, then those opportunities are out there now. And that concludes my OVTA report.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments? I see none, so we will move then to Enterprise Renfrew County report.
Thank you again. So number one on the report is the launch of the Summer Company Program for 2023. The Summer Company Program is a youth employment program for those aged 15 to 29, for those who are interested in pursuing self-employment throughout the summer. So the program provides training and support to students, and students can receive up to $3,000 in grant funding to support their operations throughout the summer. Lindsay DeBurton, our program officer, is currently doing outreach with all the educational institutions and the school boards across the county to promote the program, and we've got links in the report to Enterprise Renfrew County's website for more information. And this is a great opportunity that we encourage everybody to kind of share the news about for this program for student employment. Number two is the Francophone Entrepreneurship Programming, which is currently underway and will conclude at the end of March. So a couple more virtual marketing workshops have taken place and will be taking place. So one last week, one tomorrow, as well as on March 21st and 29th. And then there's a networking breakfast on March 6th, which will include the presentation of the Francophone Entrepreneur Award. So just a reminder that if you have Francophone entrepreneurs in your community, please consider nominating them or having them submit a self-nomination for this award. And nominations can be sent to Enterprise Renfrew County. And this event on March 6th is being held in partnership with La Centre Culturel Francophone de Pembroke, as well as Community Futures Development Corporation and the City of Pembroke. Number three is the Service Concierge Storefront Beautification and Merchandising Workshop that's being held here at the County of Renfrew at the end of the month on February 27th. And that is in collaboration with the Town of Petawawa, City of Pembroke, and Township of Laurentian Valley, and that's to assist businesses with building their storefront branding and product merchandising displays and design. And that concludes my report. I'll stop there before the recommendation.
Thank you very much. So we will go back to information item number 1, which is the summer company program. Comments, questions? Seeing none, the Francophone entrepreneurship programming. Yes, Councillor Survey.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Melissa. Melissa, is there a certain level of French proficiency that's mandated for any of these applicants for that Francophone program?
No, it's been kept very loose and very simple. The business just has to be owned by a Francophone person. They don't even necessarily have to be delivering Francophone services. It's just to highlight Francophone-owned entrepreneurs and businesses.
Thank you.
Any other comments on item number 2? Seeing none, item number 3 is the service concierge, the storefront beautification and merchandising. And so that brings us to resolutions, and I'll go back to Ms. Markwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by reading the recommendation that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council send a letter under the Warden's signature to MPP John Yakabuski, Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, in support of the request for increased core funding to all small business enterprise centres across Ontario, including Enterprise Renfrew County. And so the background on this is that Enterprise Renfrew County is part of the Small Business Centres Ontario Network, which includes 54 centres across the province. And they are all funded by the province of Ontario. And that funding has remained unchanged since 2014. And there have continued to be budget pressures related to increased staffing and program delivery across the small business centres. Data compiled from the network indicates that inquiries have increased on average by 25 to 50% across the province in the past couple of years, and is affecting the capacity for follow-up and consultation support. The Small Business Network is advocating on behalf of all small business centres for increased funding from the province, and so this letter of support is to advocate for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Comments or questions? I imagine this is a challenge, as you said, right across the province, and I know in Renfrew County, especially as our business grows with more and more people moving in from outside of Renfrew County, it would be nice to see this funding increase. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So then we will move to the Forestry and GIS Division report, and Ms. Rose, please.
Thank you, Chair. Number 1 under information is the 2022 annual report for activities in the Renfrew County Forest, which is attached to your report. A short summary is that we did harvest 58 hectares of forest, producing just over $163,000 in revenue. And although this is slightly lower than expected, the reason for that is that several of our operations were granted an extension into 2023 because of the delays in operator availability that were caused by the May 2022 windstorm. And we also did complete a unplanned salvage operation in the Centennial Lake Tract. As a result, the 2023 revenue will be quite a bit higher than normal. So you can see that as we move through the year in updates to come. Item B is another report, the 2022 Renfrew County Forest Health Update. We started doing these a few years ago due to increased public and elected inquiries about forest health issues in Renfrew County. So this will be available on our website along with our annual activities in the Renfrew County Forest. The major items, although the spongy moth population crashed, we did see an outbreak of cedar leaf miner, which I think had almost as many inquiries to my voicemail and email as the spongy moth. It was a really visible forest health issue. and also that significant blowdown event that I mentioned in May 2022. Pressures to the forest continue from a number of invasive species, including emerald ash borer and beech bark disease, and there's another on the horizon that we will talk about a bit further on in this report. Item C, I was interviewed as part of a 12-episode podcast series that's titled Canadian Forestry Can Save the World. So this is being produced by the Forest Products Association of Canada through their campaign called Forestry for the Future. And there's forestry professionals, First Nations scientists, and other interested parties in the forest are featured as part of this podcast. So I think they're on about episode 6 of 12 being released right now, and it's available online if you're into podcasts. Item D, I also presented at the 36th Kemptville Winter Woodlot Conference. That's happening on lunch hours throughout February, and the presentation focused on legislation changes that have occurred over the last year that impact how private woodlot owners, community forests, and others manage their forests that haven't really been widely communicated, just to kind of bring those to the forefront for people to at least be aware of. And that presentation is also available online. And I'll pause there.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. So we'll go back to the beginning of the information item number 1. A, the annual report for activities in Renfrew County Forest. Comments, questions? Item B is the Renfrew County Forest Health Update. Item C is the County Forester podcast. And item D is the County Forester Winter Woodlot Conference. And I guess I just had one question, and it was in regards to the legislation changes that affect private woodlot owners. Is this mostly in regards to some of the invasive species, or are there other components that private landowners should be aware of?
Thank you, Chair. That's a great question, and we have talked about all of these issues around this table, but on a wider scale, they haven't really been known, so that includes the butternut health assessor is no longer required. It's a butternut health expert that is kind of a self-assessed criteria to do assessment for removal of infected butternut trees, which are a species at risk. The second one I talked about was black ash being designated an endangered species, which we have sent several letters about as the County of Renfrew so far. And the third one was changes to the Migratory Bird Act, which protects pileated woodpecker nesting cavities for not only when they're occupied, but up to 36 months post pileated woodpecker leaving if anything else inhabits those nests. So those are protected under the Migratory Bird Act.
Thank you. And how would a private woodlot owner know about this?
Well, they could tune in online to the Kemptville Winter Woodlot Conference. It's really difficult to keep up to date with information like that, which is why organizations like the Ontario Woodlot Association try to provide this information through online forums for their members.
Thank you for that. So we'll move on to resolutions, and I'll turn it back over to you, Lacey.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll read the recommendation first, and this is about another invasive species that's on the horizon, the hemlock woolly adalgid. So the recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee directs staff to send a letter to the Honourable Graydon Smith, Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, requesting the province take action to support ongoing efforts to address the threat of hemlock woolly adalgid. So the background on this is that this is another invasive species which has not yet been found in Renfrew County, but was found within 200 kilometers of our border in 2022. And as many of you know, if you frequent the forest, hemlock is a not uncommon species here that is an important cover type to this area. And for some products, it's an important wood species as well. So far, monitoring's been happening by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and it's been very limited geographically for the pest, mostly in southern Ontario. There has not ever been any formal surveys done in this area. So the Ontario Woodlot Association and other community forests in Central Ontario have requested MNRF to increase their involvement and funding to monitor, research, educate, and control existing populations. So there's a draft letter attached, and this is consistent with the County of Renfrew's previous responses sent to the ministry supporting efforts to address invasive species.
You've heard the resolution. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Service, seconded by Councillor Weir. Comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And item number 4 is the resolution letter of support, and I'll go back to you, Lacey. Oh, I'm sorry. That one was already dealt with. I'm getting my page numbers confused here. So we'll move on to our real property, real estate division report, and Mr. Raditz.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the committee. Good afternoon. The real estate report is found on page 20. It's a very short report. In the attached appendix, essentially, we're just identifying the proposed 2023 projects, and as you can see, there will be a little bit of activity happening at the Renfrew County Place this year. So once we have approval of the projects in the upcoming weeks, we will be drafting some scope of works and initiate some RFQs. And Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Raditz. Any comments, questions regarding the capital project report? Seeing none, then we will move on to the planning.
Thank you, Chair. The package for planning, the planning report starts on page 22 of the package that the committee has. The first 3 items are for information. Number 1 is a staffing update. Just for information, Alex Benzie, County Planner, has accepted a position with the Township of Whitewater Region, and her last day with the county was on January 27th, and we wish Alex all the best with her new position. Item number 2 is a update with regards to land division. Yesterday, we held our first land division with our new committee, and as Councillor McKenzie can attest to, it was a fairly lengthy day. When I wrote this report, we hadn't obviously had the committee meeting yet. There was one change in the report. It indicates that all 11 consent applications that we were considering were due to issues or concerns raised by the members of public. When we had the meeting yesterday, there was one application that was raised due to concerns from one of the local municipalities. But anyways, we did have a fairly lengthy day, but a successful day, and the committee did a great job. Item number 3 is an attached resolution. This was a circulation that was received from the town of Halton Hills, and this was a resolution requesting that the provincial government repeal Bill 23, and that's just provided for information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. So we will go back to information item number 1 and the staffing update. Comments, questions? Alex will certainly be missed here, but I'm sure Whitewater is happy to have her. Land division report update, item number 2. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, item number 3 is Bill 23, more homes built faster. Comments, questions? Seeing none, we will move on to resolutions, and back to you, Mr. Howarth.
Thank you, Chair. So this resolution, there's actually 2 recommendations, and we're looking for staff direction on 2 matters. So I'll read the 2 recommendations. They are separate but sort of related. So the recommendation 1 is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council provide staff direction to discontinue holding a public meeting for plans of subdivision. And recommendation number 2 is that Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council provide staff direction to amend the consent delegation approval bylaw to delegate to staff the decisions on contested applications. So for a matter of background, that's contained in the report. The province did pass Bill 23, which made a number of changes to the Planning Act. And one of the main purposes of the bill are to encourage more housing, in particular affordable housing, and also to find efficiencies to reduce the amount of time it takes to process planning applications. So a number of changes were made, and two of those key changes that were in Bill 23 was, number one, the removal of mandatory public meetings for plans of subdivision or condominiums, and number two, removal of third-party appeals for consent applications. So for number one, with regards to the public meeting on the plan of subdivision, previously under different bills, the province has already removed the public's ability to appeal a plan of subdivision. And so Bill 23 went the extra step of removing that mandatory public meeting. So so typically the county requests that the local municipality, so wherever that plan of subdivision is located, we ask that that local municipality host the mandatory public meeting, which is no longer required by the Planning Act. So we are recommending that these public meetings be discontinued because there would be a reduction of processing time, a reduction in costs. The public already doesn't have any appeal rights for these plans of subdivision. And if the public meeting was discontinued, concerned or interested members of the public, they would still have the opportunity to write or provide comments on the applications for either the county or the developer's consideration. For recommendation 2, another, again, one of those significant changes was the elimination of a third-party appeal to a consent application. So a third-party appeal is essentially like a neighbor or an adjacent property owner wanting to appeal a decision of the county or the Land Division Committee. The municipality or other public agencies, the minister, they still have the ability, and the applicant, they would all still have the ability to appeal a decision, but it's just that third party or the neighbor who would no longer have that ability to appeal. The holding of a land division committee is not mandatory either in the Planning Act, under the Planning Act, and it is up to the municipality of how to handle these applications. So in light of the province's desire to speed up the process, holding the Land Division Committee meetings does add several months to the decision-making process of a severance application. And so we're recommending that disputed consents that are raised as a result of public concerns or objections, that those would no longer trigger a Land Division Committee. So these disputed consents, and as you can see from the earlier information item with regards to land division that was held yesterday, 10 out of those 11 applications were raised, that the hearing was triggered because of a concern raised by a property owner. So if the bylaw were amended, that would take 10 of those 11 items off that agenda and allow those 10 items to be processed quicker and have staff delegate to make that decision. So we do recommend that, a staff recommendation, that committee council provide staff direction on whether to bring back an amendment to the delegation bylaw. We've attached as Appendix Plan 2 what that proposed amendment would look like. Staff recommend that the bylaw be changed to remove that public concern as a trigger for the Land Division Committee. A disputed application as a result of concerns from a local municipality, any other public agency, or an issue with conformity with a planning document, such as an official plan or the provincial policy statement, those would still trigger that Land Division Committee hearing. So the removal of public concerns or objections would, in our opinion, reduce the application processing times. It would reduce county costs for both staff and committee. It would reduce costs to the applicants from having to attend that committee hearing, and anyway, so that's the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. So we'll move to the first recommendation. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Lynch, seconded by Councillor Bennett. Comments, questions? Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Chair. Bruce, do we have any public meetings scheduled at this point that we're not going to cancel, i.e. the one for Norma Street in Arnpire was posted? Are we still going to do that?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We are proposing that this change be made for applications that are submitted in the future. Current applications that have been submitted already, there would be no change in the process. So the subdivisions, for example, Ida Street or White, the ones off of White Road, would still need a public meeting is the proposal, because those applications have been submitted before these changes to the Planning Act were made.
Yes, Warden.
Thank you. I recognize the need to meet legislation, and I recognize the need for speed that's being driven down to us. I'm trying to balance that with the need to hear from the public, and so are we going to be undertaking some kind of undertaking some kind of an education process for the public on how they can still have input on this? Because I think there's a cynicism across the whole public sphere, which thinks that development runs rampant, even though that's not true, and this would just feed into that. And I think they're seeing some of the commentary coming out of Toronto with the green belt and all sorts of other things that are associated with that, and that spreads very quickly into our community, given the number of people who want to read what they read on the third page when they Google a topic. And so is there an education process that we'll be undertaking to show points of entry for the public to comment? That's my first question. And my second question is, can we get a Z card or a fridge magnet that sort of gives us a bit of a checklist, so that if somebody calls us, we can direct them? Because I'll be honest with you, right now, I have a file that's probably an inch and a quarter thick, and it takes me 2 or 3 hours to go through it and try and line things up chronologically so I understand the progress. And I recognize that's a burden for staff, but at some point, I think those 2 points, we need to focus on those. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions on the... Oh, sorry, Councillor Watt, I didn't see you.
Just wondering, for these decisions, do you speak or share the information with the municipal planners so that they're up to date with all these changes as well?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So yes, there is a working group that we formed that was looking specifically at a lot of these bills that have been coming down from the province. So we do have a working group that all municipalities were invited to have staff, and most municipalities that have planners sent their planning staff to attend and participate with these meetings. So yes, we do communicate with the local planners, and they are up to date on these changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. So recommendation number 2 is in regards to the contested applications. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Watt, seconded by Councillor Weir. Comments, questions? Yes, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair. So, having participated in the Land Committee meeting yesterday, I do support this, and again, I do echo Warden Emo's comments. I support it on the basis that we can't really give the public the impression that there's something they can do about it when they can't, is the direction this is going in. Chair Grills and Councillor Wilmer were there yesterday as well too, and as Warden Emo commented, we do need to have an outlet for the public just to come and express their concerns. Even though there's not much they can do about it. For example, the previous recommendation we talked about subdivisions. I mean, if we are creatures of the province, and if this is the way the province is going, we pretty much have to fall in line. There were a lot of staff there at the meeting yesterday, so it does tie up a lot of staff time, and with these other bills coming through, there's tremendous pressure on staff time, and both at the county level and at our lower tier level to process the various planning applications that are coming through. So it does make sense to move forward with this recommendations on that basis as well. I don't have the answers either, but I do agree with Warden Emo that we don't want to have public input into planning decisions as to be some sort of historical thing of the past. You know, I don't have the answers, but somehow we need to have ways for the public to express their opinion more, so that as representatives of the public, we can help shape public policy in a better way.
Thank you for that, Mr. Davis.
If I may, and just remind the committee members, so the county has engaged with the company in the product called Zen City Engage. So this web application will provide an opportunity for local municipalities and ourselves to promote and to give information to the public. So when we sent out that email to each local municipalities about the Zen City Engage, we really encouraged the local municipalities to embrace this technology, to push this information out to the public. So they do need to have this information in front of them to make educated decisions and to be informed. So again, a reminder, if I could, please encourage your staff at your local level to engage with the Engage Zen City. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And just to follow up, because I don't disagree that you know, the public should have that avenue to raise their concerns and comments. Just maybe a question for Bruce. So you were saying at this recommendation that it still wouldn't prohibit a municipality from contesting an application. So I would gather from that a resident who might be a neighbor and has a concern could approach the municipality, and the municipality could make a decision whether to contest in regards to that concern.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to try to choose my words carefully on this one. So in theory, yes, would be possible, but I would want to state that these are applications to the County of Renfrew, not to the local municipality. So the municipality is a commenting agency to the county, and really we're looking for comments with regards to the municipal interests, whether it's stormwater management or impacts on your roads or your infrastructure. Comments from the public with concerns on the consent application really should be directed directly to the County of Renfrew and not be sort of steered through the local municipality. So the intention is that the county is the approval authority for these consent applications, and concerns from the public on those consents should be directed directly to the County of Renfrew, not sort of taking a side path through the local municipality.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. So that brings us to bylaws, and I'll go back to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. So there are 3 bylaws, each relating to official plan amendments that were submitted to the County of Renfrew. So item number 5 is with regards to Calabogie Motorsports Track, official plan amendment number 37. This is located within the township of Greater Madawaska. The recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council pass a bylaw to adopt and approve official plan amendment number 37. So just by way of background, the official plan amendment and a staff report are attached as appendixes to the report. This application proposes to change the designation slightly for the property that the motorsports track is on to expand the uses that are permitted, specifically for other uses that are typically you would see in a rural area, including residential uses. So this amendment would allow some future residential uses to occur on that property or nearby on that property, and provided that certain factors are still addressed, such as road access, site suitability, servicing, impacts on the natural environment, and so on, and noise is also a large one. So the recommendation is that we support this, and any future residential development on that property will be addressed at a future stage, whether it's through a plan of subdivision or consent applications, and those requirements to ensure it's compatible with the track will be addressed at a future stage. So this is really setting the policy context for those future uses to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Lynch, seconded by Councillor Weir. Comments, questions? Councillor Service and then Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Bruce. Do we have any idea at the present time of the scope of the development or the type of development that they're proposing here? Is it just severance of a couple of lots, or are they thinking of a subdivision, or is it more related to the racetrack itself?
Through you, Chair. So there are a couple of different concepts out there. So nothing has formally been submitted. So I don't want to say too much because I don't want to put, give it inaccurate, but there are the potential for some severance applications. And also there's a concept that has long been discussed at the racetrack that hasn't come to fruition because of various policy and different things. But the idea was to potentially have a plan of condominium style development where users of the track would be able to own a residential unit or a portion or share the ownership of a residential unit on top with a garage underneath that could be potentially used for maintenance of their cars that they're using at the track. So it would allow a host of different opportunities and let the track really to come with a proposal to fit their business market and come with a proposal that will fit for how they want to see the track grow and expand in the future.
Councillor Weir.
I was just going to say what you said. So just that it had gone through, we had a public meeting on it, and it was discussed. There was a great deal of public engagement at the meeting, and it was passed to bring it up here for, thank you.
Oh, Warden Nemo.
Thank you. I'm glad to see this. I sat through and was chair of planning in Greater Madawaska in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 to 14. And so it's been a very long process, and the initial vision was for a motorsports track with a community to be developed around it, but the community concept, I think, is now being further defined and refined. And it's always been seen, I think, by the greater part of the community as an economic driver for Greater Madawaska and for this portion of the county. It brings a lot of visitors in. My mom's house is right on the corner of Wilson Farm Road, so we often sat and watched the vehicles and looked at license plates and talked to people at the stop sign. And so it brings in a lot of people, brings in a lot of revenue to the community of Greater Madawaska, but also for the county. And I think it has driven a certain amount of development in that portion of the county as well. There's been a number of businesses purchased and developed by people who originally came to the area to visit the track. So I think it's done what was promised in terms of driving visits and driving investment. And I only see a very positive future by it continuing to develop its business model and its community within the constraints of the official plan and zoning bylaw. So I'm very glad to see this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, then I will call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Back to you, Bruce. Item number 6, the cell quarry.
Thank you. So yeah, item number 6 is another official plan amendment number 38. The recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council pass a bylaw to adopt and approve official plan amendment number 38. And that, again, the official plan amendment and the planning report are attached as appendixes to the report. This amendment would change the designation of a small piece of property from rural to a mineral aggregate designation, and this is for the purpose of facilitating an expansion to the cell quarry, which is in the township of Bonnechere Valley, and that the approval of this official plan amendment will allow the owner to proceed with the application to the ministry for an aggregate license on this to expand that cell quarry and expand the quarry's lifespan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Comments, questions? I see none. All in favor? And that's carried. So item number 7 is Voyager Bay, and we'll turn back to Bruce for that.
Thank you, Chair. It's, again, another official plan amendment. This one is official plan amendment number 39. The recommendation, again, is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council pass a bylaw to adopt and approve official plan amendment number 39. For background, attached to the planning report is the official plan amendment and a planning report that provides the details with regards to the proposal. There is, this property is in the Township of Whitewater Region down on the Ottawa River. It is south or slightly downriver from the rapid section where they do a lot of the rafting and kayaking on the Ottawa River. The proposal is to create an additional 8 lots through the consent process. The official plan amendment was required because the number of lots have, the maximum number of lots that can be severed off of property has been exceeded for this property. And so the proposal was, instead of doing a plan of subdivision, to continue with the consent process. There are a number of studies and requirements that the owner will still be required to undertake as they go through that process through the consent process, including hydrogeological assessments, stormwater management, environmental impact studies, protection of the environment again, and access and future agreements between the landowner and OPG. And also attached to the report are a number of letters that were received from provincial ministries and other public agencies. And these comments are all related to the future consent applications to make sure that the development can proceed in an orderly fashion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. You've heard the recommendation. Once again, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Watts, seconded by Councillor Weir. Comments, questions? Yes, Warden.
Thank you. Just, can you remind me about the private road? It says access will be through the private road. So will that be a covenant put on each individual deed, or is there an association set up? So if you could just remind me of that, please.
Yeah, thank you. So this is, so access is first off of Pettigrew Road, which is a township road, and then as you continue down that road, it converts into a private road. Off the top of my head, I think it's Voyager Bay Road. So that is a private road that was recently created. It's fairly new. The Township of Whitewater Region does have a private road agreement with the landowner to maintain that road as a private road. The property owner is responsible for maintenance and all the long-term construction costs of that road. So these properties will be created together with a right-of-way over that existing Voyager Bay Road. So they will maintain on-title access over that right-of-way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Service.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Bruce. In reading the amendment, I understand that one of the concerns is septic systems, and I know that there's going to be hydrological studies done to ensure that everything is above board. Would there ever be any follow-up in the years afterwards to ensure that there hasn't been any leakage of the septic systems into the river? Or once those studies are done, we're just taking it on, on faith that nothing is going to happen?
Yep. Through you, Chair. Generally, yes, that's correct. There's not a lot of follow-up that's done afterwards, so the work is done up front. It's the developer's responsibility to demonstrate that there are not going to be any long-term effects of the approval of this development. So they'll look at the increase of septic systems in the area, and they'll do that, the combination of the hydrogeological study and the environmental impact study and the stormwater management study. They actually are intended to work together to provide recommendations and saying, if we're going to be approving this development, how can we ensure that there's proper mitigation efforts, such as keeping a vegetated buffer, making sure that the septic systems are installed properly at the get-go to ensure that there's no long-term impacts on the quality of water. So provided that the municipality it talks about requirements in here that's going to be at the consent process. So the municipality is responsible for having those agreements and implementing any of those mitigation measures provided for in those studies. So the only time that there's septic inspections required afterwards, so sometimes depending on the density of the development, there's a requirement for different septic systems. There's different classes of septic systems. So class 4 is your typical conventional septic system, and that's where the vast majority of rural lots have these class 4 septic systems, and there's no inspection program right now. I can't think of one in Renfrew County. There's talk about one in around Muskrat Lake, but to my knowledge, there's not. No municipality has implemented a septic inspection program. Municipalities do have the ability to, but there's a different class of septic system called a tertiary septic system, which has an enhanced level of treatment. And these septic systems do require ongoing maintenance to make sure that they are working properly. And those tertiary septic systems come with a reporting requirement to the municipality saying that, yes, the maintenance has been done on the tertiary system and that it is operating efficiently. So it will really depend on the results of that hydrogeological study to determine whether or not these lots will be developed based on a conventional class 4 system, which would not require any long-term monitoring or reporting, or if the recommendation is to move forward with the tertiary system, then there will be some type of monitoring ongoing that they'll have to do with the local municipality.
Thank you for that very thorough answer.
Thank you. Any other comment? Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Chair. To Bruce, I'm a city guy, so I don't know too much about septics, but I do know when you get a septic, you have to have a permit, and once that permit's issued, you're good to go. I don't know if there's a warranty on that thing for 10 or 15 or 25 years, but somewhere along the line, these things will expire. I know my father-in-law used to have a tank in the back that they had to get emptied, and then that rotted out. They had to dig up the backyard and put a new one in. So I'm concerned that there's no expiry date on septics. I think maybe the county should start looking at maybe doing some sort of investigation or a study to see how many of these things have failed within the county. I don't know how you'd find that out, but I have concerns over septic systems. Thank you.
Bruce, did you want to comment?
The only thing I would say is that the septics are approved by the local municipality. So the municipalities have a local septic inspector and it's within their jurisdiction. So I'm not sure where that overlap is with the county jurisdiction, but it is at the local level with who have the septic inspectors.
Thank you. Warden Nemo.
Thank you. I have always had a septic system that I've had to maintain on my own, and I've only ever had one fail, and it was I purchased a house where the previous owner or owners had inadvertently discharged the water softener into it, and so the salt, residue salt, and the heat and the chain reaction that occurs when the tank caused the tank to rot, and so had to exchange it. The rest of them, I think most of us get them pumped once every 4 or 5 years. I'm looking at my friend next door. He lives out in the bush with myself, and when you're doing that, the pumper inspects it and gives you a recommendation. And so there have been times where, in another instance, they had suggested it would last X number of years, and I went ahead and changed it. So I think most people are pretty accommodating and responsible. And with the move to the white, I'll call them plastic tanks, they're much more than plastic, but that is certainly added to the longevity. I think the concrete tanks last for a substantial amount of time if they're installed properly, and if you don't drain your water softener into them, I think that's really helpful too. But most people, it's been my experience, are pretty responsible with their tanks because it's such an investment. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions? I had one, and it's basically in regards to this developer who has already developed a number of lots in this same area. I can't remember if it's 6 or 7. And the province is recommending a plan of subdivision. We're taking a little different route. Is there a danger that the county's setting a precedent that if the developer wants to go with more lots, that he would want to use the same process, or could he be required to do a plan of subdivision?
Thank you, Chair. We had a very similar question yesterday at our Land Division Committee as well with regards to precedent. So in planning, it's not like a court of law where your decisions are setting a precedent. So every application that is submitted to either the county or the local municipality, each has to stand on its own merits, and that each one it can be evaluated based on its own site-specific factors. So, and that's based on policy at the time, legislation at the time, and those site-specific circumstances. So I don't think there is a danger of a precedent being set. Originally, county staff did recommend that a plan of subdivision be submitted, but based on the site specific factors here, being that the private road is already there. If you look at, there is in the planning report a graphic showing how this development would fit in with the existing lot pattern. So this is really filling in between a bunch of other lots. So there is a unique sort of factor there as well, saying, all these other lots exist and we're just filling in between, and the need for a full plan subdivision wasn't really necessary on this particular instance. But in general, yes, if somebody came with a proposal for even more than 5 lots, county staff would be recommending a plan of subdivision process.
Thank you. Warden Nemo.
And thank you. And if I might add, one of the things we suggested to Minister Clark 2 years ago, I can't remember now, times when we were going through the official plan, process and getting it approved, we wanted more flexibility and more ability to reflect the current and local needs. And I think this is part of that responsibility is accepting that flexibility and using it when it's possible to encourage development in areas like Mr. Howarth has said, in terms of it's an infill process in a lot of ways with this, and by requesting a plan of subdivision, it may not have occurred. So I think we're meeting what our request was to the province, to allow greater flexibility and recognition of local conditions first, and then secondly, I think inadvertently, we're meeting the requirements of Bill 23, the faster build a house policy. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And just one further question, and it's basically, I guess, in regards to the flood mapping. Is this an area that could be affected if we had experienced another flood like we did in 17 and 2019?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that is absolutely one of the factors that we look at when addressing a development proposal. So this area is high. There's a steep incline from the Ottawa River up to this property, and it is also on a section of the river that is controlled by, I think it's the Cheneau Dam, but it is controlled by OPG, and it is an area that would not flood even in the height of 2019 with the big flood that happened. These lands would have been high and dry with no risk to persons or property. So flooding is not a concern for this development.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, comments, then I will call the vote. All in favor? And that's been carried. So now we'll move back to the beginning of the report from Director Davis and follow up with his resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. On page 3 of your committee package, back to resolutions. And the first item under resolution, item number 9, is the 2023 draft budget. And I'll read the recommendation, and I do have a quick presentation to help assist with the discussion moving forward. So the recommendation that the Development and Property Committee recommends that the draft 2023 Development and Property Department budget be approved and forwarded to the February 22nd, 2023 County Council Budget Workshop for approval. And with your indulgence, Chair, I do have a presentation, and I'll try and share my screen and see how that works as we move forward. Sorry, Mr. Kelly.
Sorry, I'm busy looking at something. Chair, if you don't mind, just before Jason begins. So I just wanted to intro, and you'll hear me probably say this 5 or 6 times before we start. So before we begin looking at the departmental budget and hearing about the plans the director, in this case the managers, have for 2023, I'd like to acknowledge the hard work that everyone put into this year's budget. Coming out of a significantly tough year, balancing the wants and needs of the community as we balance the effects of the pandemic on our work plans, our regular activities are now costing us much more. Delivering the same services is going to require innovation, as you'll see today, creativity, and support from various other sources. We're absolutely aware of the effects that any increase may have on the individuals in our community. However, we were challenged to meet all of our deliverables with the targets that were set for us in 2022, but the team has placed before you today a reasonable approach to 2023. You will hear more about some alternative service delivery methods and some innovative approaches to get to our levy targets, some with significant impacts to our operational model. To that end, there will be a need to bring some of the discussion into a closed session today of committee to discuss issues of a sensitive nature. We look forward to actively engaging with you in this year's budget, one of our toughest to date, and hope that you can appreciate the thought and time that went into its creation. Thank you, Chair, and I'll turn it back to you and to the Director.
Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, CAO. So what I'll try and do, with Sean's support, I'll try and share my screen, and just to go over my presentation for the review. As you see in the first slide of my deck, and what I've tried to do is kind of minimize the confusion you might have. So in your committee package, starting on page 24 to page 124 to 136, is your budget package for 2023 for the D&P department. And what you see here on my screen in the next couple of slides, you'll see a number of gray page numbers on the top right-hand corner of the slide deck. That refers to the page in your committee package. And what you see here, I kind of color-coded some of the highlights within each division. And with the Chair's indulgence, I'll go through each division and put a pause on in case there's individual questions for the managers for each individual division. So what I'll start with the overview. So as Mr. Kelly mentioned, we were directed by County Council to have a target of 2.5% for our 2023 budget. But what you see here in red is if we carried our budget from last year to this year with the pressures we faced, and those 3 main pressures at this level, at this D&P level, was the implementation of the Gallagher report halfway through last year, which increased the number of staff throughout the department. Also, the County Council direction of middle of last year to increase the planning staff. Some of the returning councillors will recall planning had a pressure to complete planning applications. We were falling behind, and with that falling behind, County Council directed staff to hire an additional planning staff. And last but not least, we do have lost lease revenues for 450 O'Brien. When you look at that, and when you look at moving forward from 2022 to 2023, without the direction of County Council, our budget would have been 17.9% year over year. You see that in the small red square. And then, but to meet those budget targets that County Council directed us to have of 2.5%, the larger red column is the budget pressure item where we have to reduce some services, and in case look at different options to meet that 2.5%. So we did meet that 2.5% with a number of pressures. What you see in the far left-hand column in the blue square is an enhancement. And those enhancements are from a business case, which we'll talk about later on. So it has minimal impact to the department, but there is an impact nonetheless. And we'll talk about that during the business case part of this report. So again, a reminder to the real estate division. So the real estate division under Kevin Raditz has 2 portfolios, the buildings of Renfrew County, and most recently, the Renfrew County Housing Corporation maintenance. So 2 main projects that they look after. And the key plans for 2023 is the new building plan for the Lee and Douglas area for the 12-bed unit. A number of capital projects they have on the plate for 2023. So a big year for the real estate, Kevin Raditz and his team. That being said, and in reality, most of his building projects and budget projects will meet and have met the 2023 budget target of 2.5. The first page on page 125 of your committee package of his report is this building. We call this the County Administration Building. And what you see here, there is no budget pressure. I've highlighted in gray down below a special projects from last year, from 2022, is not being carried over, and that's the garden that we implemented for the Algonquins at Pikwakanagan, and that's not occurring this year. So that's why you see actually a reduction in this divisional budget. Renfrew County Place, and this is where you see under a red column, we do have a pressure. We have lost, and this has been no surprise and no secret, we've lost a number of organizations from this building, the health unit, CFDC, and the child care. So with those lost revenues, there's a budget pressure for us. We have all intent purposes to replace these leases with other ones, but right now we have to budget that we're not going to have leases, but we have some good opportunities moving forward, and I feel very confident that this budget pressure will be solved before the end of the year. Again, for those, a reminder, Kevin and his team looks after 4 paramedic bases that we own and maintain. And I've just mentioned this, we do receive internal lease revenues from the EMS team to maintain these buildings and to pay back the bills that we've done in the past. And that's found on page 126 of your committee package if you're following along. The R. Pryor building under 80 McGonigal, again, no budget pressure. Again, we are receiving internal lease revenues from community services. That pays for the repayment costs and the ongoing maintenance. So again, no pressure from this division. Last but not least is the OPP station. So recently, for the new members, we did build an OPP station on 450 O'Brien lands. Again, this project's being paid back by the OPP and the maintenance costs within that. So again, no budget pressure for Kevin's team moving forward. So maybe, Chair, if I could leave it at that in case there's questions, individual questions for Mr. Raditz and individual line items.
Thank you for that, Jason. Are there any questions on the property presentation of the budget? I see none, so please go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to the forestry budget, and that's found on page 128 of your committee package. Again, a number of items we're moving forward within the forestry division, and you'll see this later on. Finalizing the cell tower. That's going to be located on a county forest if that does get approved. Reviewing the carbon credit program. There's a good possibility of a revenue generation from this program. This is an ongoing thing we've reviewed, and we'll have something for you hopefully in March for consideration. And we're still supporting the land claim. And the biggest thing for Lacey, as you see in her reports as we move forward, she is supporting the forest industry with outreach and education programs. But looking at the budget, we do have budget pressures. What you see here, what we propose to meet that target of 2.5% is we've included the lease revenues. You see that on the red square of $4,700, and that's a revenue from the proposed cell tower that's hopefully will be implemented this year, and the reduction of some personal development of $1,900. And again, what you see in blue on the left-hand column, and that's the budget case, what you'll move forward with. And I'll stop there if there's any questions for the forestry section.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Chair. To Jason, the cell tower lease, are we negotiating that or is that a firm price?
If I may, Chair, it is a closed item. I can say we have more information shortly.
Any other questions on the forestry? I'm seeing none, so thank you, and please go ahead, Mr. Davis.
The trail budget, again, the main pressure, and it's not really a pressure, and again, that's found on page 129. I just want to focus, again, no pressure, however, a big change. In the proposed business case, which will be discussed later on, is the transferring of the maintenance and the build of the trails to Public Works. But as a budget line item and to move forward from this department to the February 22nd meeting, no budget pressure. I do want to highlight a number of things under the blue column under the business case to meet the target within this budget. We're taking $29,000 out of the base budget for the Trails Division to meet the salary requirements as we move forward through the business case, and maybe I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments on trails? I see none, so please go ahead, Mr. Davis.
A GIS budget, a little confusing. Again, we have two columns you have here, one in red and one in blue. We do have some pressures and to try to reduce the budget for the GIS division. You see a reduction in computer supply and maintenance for $3,000, and that's to do with the ESRI enterprise license agreement we signed up with last year. And more importantly, when you see in that red box, $15,000 from internal revenues and $60,000 from municipal recoveries. That $60,000 is to do with the flood mapping application that we brought to this committee. We're expecting local partners with local municipalities to support the flood mapping with monies from those local municipalities. The majority have expressed an interest that they'll support this, but not all. But it's still a budget pressure, and so that's why we've highlighted in $60,000 that we might need. And again, when you look at the blue column on the left-hand side, again, that's to do with the larger business case moving forward. And I'll pause for now.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Yes, Councillor Bennett.
Through the chair, the municipalities have all responded positively to where the letters went out from the county for everybody's share, or do we have confirmation of that?
Through you, Chair. So not all municipalities have confirmation or confirmed that they'll support this initiative. So we have two municipalities that have not. We're still talking to them to see what the final numbers are going to be. And once we realize and find out the final numbers for the local municipalities, then we'll bring back to this committee for review and acceptance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I see none, so please go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Moving on to the economic development budget. Again, you see where a number of initiatives going on in 2023. Now, I will not reiterate what we talked about in January's presentation, but you see where it's a very busy department in economic development, and the pressures are always building. But there are a number of budget pressures, and to meet those budget pressures of the 2.5%, you see a number of reductions. More importantly, in that red column for the budget pressures, reducing the hospitality budget, the marketing budget, which is a challenge for Melissa and her team to reduce it, but we can try and do that, to do a limited amount of work for marketing. And the biggest thing for us too is if you look at the lower section of a special red project for $20,050, it's a film attraction investment project through a grant application. And even now to finalize this project before March 31st will be a challenge, and the proposal here is not to move forward with that project. So a number of items have been highlighted not to move forward with to meet that 2.5% budget target.
Thank you, Jason. Any comments, questions? I see none. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
The enterprise Renfrew County a budget, what you see here, the only pressure that we have, and maybe to highlight, to bring this budget up to $171,000 under the recoveries from the province, we're proposing a $20,000 infusion from previous grant allocations that the province have given us in the past. Any unused portions in the past have been put set aside for future uses, and now we're using that set aside funds to meet our budget target of $20,000 for enterprise Renfrew County. So that's the biggest stressor we have right now, and we don't have unlimited funds in this pot, but we are drawing that down. Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Any comments, questions? I see none, so please go ahead.
The OVTA, the Ottawa Valley Tourism Association budget, again, it's a zero budget pressure. We have partnerships with the City of Pembroke and other agreements. So you see zero budget pressure, but I did highlight this just to make sure that there's any questions or concerns within this committee that can be addressed right now. And that budget is on page 131 of your committee package if there's any questions or concerns.
Any comments, questions? I see none. Please go ahead.
I'm doing a specific pause in case the CAO has a comment for me.
I don't know what your next slide is, sir. What's your next slide? Okay, go ahead. I wanted, if I can just interject, sorry, Chair, and through you, I want to be sure that everybody understands what we're looking at with these budgets, because it is a bit of a change, and I'm sorry to jump in now in the middle of this, but because this is fortunately or unfortunately the first budget meeting that we're going through, and of course Mr. Foss, when we get to budget workshop, will definitely work into this in detail. Can you go back to a scenario where you've got the titles? So right there, thanks. So what we've done, and this is a departure from years past, is a different column, and I want to be sure that everybody's aware of what we're looking at. So in 2022, you'll see the 2022 budget on this chart. 2023 is all things remaining equal, if you will. If we were to do all these activities, this is what 2023 would have cost you. And then, of course, you see the pressures, as Director Davis has pointed out, on items that we have suggested. Staff is saying that we have a pressure point to meet our 2.5% in that second column. So these are items that we're not suggesting we want to cut. These are items we're suggesting we could. And I just want to be sure of that when we get into discussions on how we're debating this moving forward. We're not suggesting that we don't think we should do $70,000 worth of marketing in economic development. We're suggesting we think we should and we need to continue with the pattern. This is a significant change to remove $5,000 off of a marketing budget. That has a big impact. And this is just one small example. So again, going back to in my preamble comments, when we had the budget, the apples-to-apples budget from last year with this year's pressures, with the 2% cap to remove things, we had to do a deeper dive to say where are items that we possibly could remove items to do out of our budget. So I just want to be clear that that's what we're looking at, and that you are all clear of what's happening here before we move forward. And I'll take questions if I can. Sorry, Jason, to jump in. I just want to be sure that everybody knows what we're looking at. It's a new council, a new methodology of how we're budgeting, and I just want to be sure that we're all clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Are there any questions based on Mr. Kelly's comments? I'm seeing none. So, Mr. Davis, please go ahead.
No, and I appreciate Mr. Kelly's interjection, just because those red columns that I've highlighted are stressors, and in some cases are going to be service reductions that we provide or won't provide because of the reductions we're looking for. So again, thank you again, CAO Kelly, just for that clarity to meet that 2.5% target. I do believe we're on the last page for the budget review is the planning budget. And I just want, before I go do a deeper dive, and just a reminder, when I mentioned at the very beginning of this slideshow one of the biggest budget pressure was that county council direction to hire additional staff last year, so in 2022. And the reason, again, a reminder, the reasons why we hired that additional staff is to get caught up in the backlog of planning application files that were falling behind. And we heard from the elected and the public, and with those additional staff members, we have caught up relatively decent, but as you mentioned, or as Mr. Howarth mentioned during his committee review, we've lost yet another staff member to a local municipality. We're having a struggle to find a replacement for the previous junior planner that when she left in November, December, and we're not unique with this. The City of Ottawa is having challenges hiring planning staff. So that's why I want to reiterate the budget pressure you see here under the column is a staff member. I won't go into details, but to make our budget, we're looking at a $10,000 increase in some of our planning fees also. And so there are big budget pressures for the planning division, and if need be, we can go into closed. But again, under the blue column you see here, you see some additional costs because of a business case. And again, we'll move forward to that moving forward. And I'll stop at that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Comments, questions? Councillor Bennett.
Just a quick comment. The planning actually took county council in the proper direction and proved to us that if we listen to them and give them the men to work with, that they can accommodate what's happening. And at smaller municipalities, it was getting critical for councils to actually look after that. But that we know how important that the planning is to the lower tier municipalities, and we appreciate very much the work that went into it. Thank you.
So I guess one of the questions for committee is, would you want to see that position remain in the planning department and remain in the budget? I know from listening to Mr. Davis and his presentation that certainly the staff have caught up in some of the backlog in the applications and general inquiries, but we have now lost another planner, and the challenge again is finding people to replace those positions. And we would move into closed if we have to, if we want to get into more detailed conversation. Councillor Lynch and then Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Just the opportunity, we've seen the federal government offering 50% wages for summer students, for French people, or French speaking, all that good stuff. Have we entertained the thought of maybe looking at a student or person that could fill this at half the cost? Or would that go under closed as well?
Let me take a crack at this. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Lynch, and through you. The short answer would be really no. I mean, a 4-month student isn't going to cut it. I mean, I have to go back to the statement that Jason suggested. This was a motion by council in 2022. It was actually 2 motions. There was 2 motions in 2022. One that we hire an additional staff member, and then, if you recall, I think it was Warden Robinson brought forward a recommendation in the spring or whatever it was for an additional county planner. It would require, that's our staff complement right now. What is being suggested in order to meet the cap, we cannot afford that recommendation that was made mid-year, to put it succinctly, going into this year in this department. So that's the main question. To go after a student position is not a business case before you. The business case before you, that would have to be a submission to you to say we were hiring a student. We don't have that student position or an intern or otherwise. We don't typically fund full-time positions out of once in a blue moon grants, if you will. And these federal grants come along, and they're usually for 4 months or 6 months or otherwise. This is a change, as you see, it's now public, it's on the screen, a change to the staffing structure in order to meet our budget cap requirements.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I don't want to get into the specifics, so if we agree that we lose the second planner and we find that we have a budget pressure, then is it possible to contract a retired planner to assist us for a period of time without creating a new position or the same position that we may cut?
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair. Ultimately, if we need to redesign the staff complement in the planning department to align better with the budget, we will still be under the same pressures to hire a contract position. You know, if you only have $1 to spend and you're already spending $1.50, you get rid of 50 cents, you still only have that $1. So how do you hire a contract position unless you have a specific project that you require? Then you have to come back to council and say, we have a specific project. Let's say we're doing the official plan again. God help us. If we're doing the official plan, then we would hire specifically a contract position to help us out. We'd make the case that we're going to spend an extra $40,000 to hire. But again, we are in a financial position where the only way for the planning department to make their budget is to reorganize their staffing complement, because planning, for the most part, is HR. There's no capital to it. There's no other than, or we can raise the fees exponentially, but I don't think that's the will of council at this point.
Councillor Service.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, is the county still providing planning services to the lower tier municipalities in the county? And by not replacing this position, will it impede or hamper your ability to provide such services? And just a follow-up to that, is there some revenue there in terms of the lower tier paying for these services that will help offset those costs?
If I may, Chair, through you, and I'll defer to Bruce for if need be, but yes, we do have planning services with local municipalities within the Corporation of County of Renfrew. We have a set fee. Does it pay for ourselves? I'd have to be blunt and honest. It doesn't pay for the cost, but we do provide that service for the local municipalities. And we're always looking at revenues. As you see in the column here, we're looking at increasing our planning fees to meet the budget target by $10,000. But it still has to be debated and discussed at County Council. So it's going to be a challenge.
Oh, Councillor McKenzie.
So a couple questions. So last year when council directed staff to hire another planner, I'm just wondering how that was financed, just in case the same thing happens similarly this year. Come out of reserves, or you had other cost savings somewhere else?
Through you, Chair, I'll take a stab at this one since I was the director at the time. No, this was, well, sir, it was not financed. It was financed through the levy. It was an additional pressure mid-year. So to hit the nail further on the point, I guess, is that there were two pressures that came at us mid-year. One was the Gallagher report. When the Gallagher report was the larger HR review, and there were a few positions, not a whole lot in DMP, I think the manager position, a few others, that there was an effect. And there's effect at the time that the Gallagher report had that would increase a few numbers. Council at that time decided to impart those changes as of August 1st of last year. The decision was made in June to structure them August 1st. They were unfunded changes. The same as the 2 positions that were added through the end of 2021 and early 2022. So I think that answers your question. I am going to add a little bit to that. Really the only reason we're discussing this, it seems weird we're discussing this at this time, is that we're in a funny situation, not terribly funny, that the 2 positions are vacant. And any other time, if this had happened in July or August, we would have filled them. But this close to budget, when we have 2 people leaving this close to budget time, they are vacant, and the stressors are on the department because of these 2 positions. So all the gains we made since we hired these 2 people are starting to slip away from us.
Supplementary?
Well, unfunded doesn't quite answer it, but that's okay. If it comes up again, we'll deal with it in whatever, and you'll lay out the options, so that's fine. So with respect to the CAO's last point and the earlier question about should we replace the planner, it's difficult to answer that because I don't know what other, haven't been able to balance that versus other pressures, but seeing that the county plans to grow and speaking as one of the municipalities that does rely on the very excellent planning services provided by the county, I would be a little bit nervous if we continue to leave that vacant.
Thank you, Councillor Weir.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just more of a comment and an observation. So every area in the municipalities, counties, and across Canada is having problems getting planners. And people are moving from one county, municipality, and so on and so forth around. I'm just wondering if we don't have a person in this position, we don't have any succession planning, and what would be the cost to us to not have anybody in these positions. So I think it's pretty important that we have a complement of staff that can overlap and assist when we do have vacancies. Now, I don't know whether we have a cost analysis as well as what does it cost us to train somebody to come into that position that has not been in our county before, instead of having somebody working along with somebody else. So I think that it's necessary that we have a complement of staff that in case we do have some sort of succession planning, that we have somebody trained in advance so that we don't have to start at ground zero and move forward for costing that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from Mr. Kelly or Mr. Davis?
I concur. Thank you.
And maybe just to add to that is when we at County Council last year decided to direct staff to hire another planner, just in general queries alone, I think the lag time was anywhere from 6 to 9 months to get a response from a general inquiry, which was really creating challenges for somebody who was wanting to build and seeing the inflationary costs of the build increase while they're waiting. We were getting a lot of concerns and comments from our local residents and our staff as to how could we shorten that time frame and how could we improve that service. So county did catch up, but now with 2 positions vacant, we are certainly faced with a challenge moving forward. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair, and true to you. I don't think that we can actually look at doing anything other than what planning has put together for us as municipalities, because they've shown us that they need the manpower in order to accommodate. And we're making the decisions now with not as much paperwork in front of us, but the planning of subdivisions, the planning of land development is just going to come back and get us in 60 days from now, and we're going to be sitting here saying, where are we going to get them people? And I don't think we, as the municipalities of Renfrew County, for the value of that the planning department is giving to all the municipalities, can afford to do anything but move forward in a plan and try and finance it adequately to do it, and make sure that the developers that are in Renfrew County are actually hoping to pay for them services, because at the end of the day, that boils down to lot developments, and their charges need to go to the developed land back to the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Evo.
So today, essentially what we're asking, or what the committee is being asked, is to make a recommendation to the budget workshop, in essence, that we fill these positions, with the understanding that a budget workshop, county council will then discuss it, and through that discussion, will either approve it or not, and if it's approved, then it becomes a function of the budget workshop to fund those two positions. Is that my understanding what we're doing today? Essentially, if we're in agreement, we need those, sorry, the one position, if we're in agreement, we need one position filled, which is the one that was recommended last August, then that becomes a decision point for the budget workshop.
Yes, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kelly.
Through your chair to the warden. Yes, that's essentially what you're looking at. I mean, what will be brought forward is all of these reports. You'll see in its entirety all of the pressures that will have to be dealt with at the budget workshop. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Thanks. Unless Mr. Foss has anything more to add as the treasurer, but I think he's good.
Mr. Foss?
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I would certainly echo the CAO's comments. I think corporately, staff were challenged to present to County Council a budget that met their levy target of 2.5%. So as we begin to present these budgets to each committee and then collectively at the budget workshop, each committee will be shown how we, staff, are trying to achieve that 2.5% target. And one of the elements, of course, within the planning department would be this vacant position. And in order for us to achieve that target, we would be suggesting as staff that one of the ways for the planning department to achieve that target would be not to fill that position. But there are challenges in each of the departments that are coming forward this week to each of the committees. And I think collectively we would have that opportunity then at the budget workshop to go through these in detail, the entire council body, and then to make some decisions about priority areas and where council wishes to invest or accept some of the suggestions for reductions. I think to do that on a collective basis. So certainly development of property is not unique and the planning department is not unique, but these are some of the service level changes or reductions that would need to take place in order for us to fulfill that council direction of presenting a budget that meets a 2.5% levy increase. At the budget workshop next week, we will do just that. We will show you how, where we started and how we were able to achieve a 2.5% levy change. But we will summarize for you all of the service level reductions that need to happen for us to get there. There are $3 million of reductions that have to come forward for us to be able to achieve this target. So the list is pretty significant. And I think it will challenge all of us to be able to come to grips with that particular set of challenges and achieving that 2.5% budget target. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess my question, and I look to Mr. Kelly, if we approve this recommendation, then the committee is approving moving forward with the reduction of one staff. if we would like to keep this position, do we need an amendment or do we need a separate recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I'll, typically at our committees, we make a recommendation to move a budget to the budget workshop for discussion and debate by the entire elected body. It's not necessarily that, and you certainly have the ability at your committee level to make any changes that you wish to this budget. And to suggest something different, to go to the budget workshop, but you're not necessarily approving these reductions or approving these changes. You're simply forwarding this document to the budget workshop to be discussed and debated by all of County Council.
Yes, Mr. Kelly.
I'm new to the job. I'm just looking at the recommendation, folks, and it does have the word approved in there, and I'm just wondering if we slightly amend it just to say that it be forwarded to the February County Council Budget Workshop instead, because that would, based on this discussion, suggest approval, but instead we'll maybe look at that wording moving forward in different committees, that it would be the recommendation. The Development and Property Committee recommends that the draft D&P budget be forwarded to the budget workshop for approval. So I just ask for that amendment to that recommendation when it's read into record.
That's just a friendly amendment. Do I need a mover and a seconder for the amendment, Mr. Kelly? Okay. So just for committee's clarification, I will reread the recommendation, and that is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that the draft 23 Development and Property Department budget be forwarded to the February 22nd, 2023 County Council Budget Workshop for approval. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Service, seconded by Councillor Lynch. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And then I will need a mover and a seconder to accept the committee report as a whole. Sorry. I have a couple business cases underneath that. Oh, sorry, yes, I got ahead of myself. There's a couple of business cases that Mr. Davis has to present. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the support, Craig Kelly, for the last item. So item number 10 is a business case for the restructuring of the Forestry and GIS division. And I'll read the recommendation, and I do have a bit of a slide deck, not many slides, 2 or 3, just to give a highlight of what's going on and the proposal. A lot of moving parts in this business case, but the recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee approve the proposed restructuring to the Development and Property Department as follows. And what we'll do is, if I can share my screen again, Sean, and I'll work through the proposal. I am almost, do you have that, Sean, or no? Okay. Thanks again, Sean. And if I may, Chair, so for the business case, we have here a possibility and a recommendation that you have in front of you where the proposal in your committee package found on page 137 to 142 is the business case, a number of pages, in-depth pages for the business case. I've condensed this into 3 or 4 slides just to provide a background, a quick background. So the proposal is to, with the recent changes in my position and Mr. Craig Kelly moving up to the CAO, we have an opportunity to implement a lot of things that happened in the service delivery review project in 2020. So the proposal is to remove the manager of forestry and GIS, to change the existing GIS technician position to a different name and a different category to a GIS coordinator, add a full-time GIS, and we've called this a GIS planning technician position to focus on planning files. GIS staff will then be reporting to the planning division under Mr. Bruce Howarth. The county forester to increase her roles and responsibilities to report directly to the Director of Development and Property. Add a full-time forester for a forestry technician position. Change the existing forestry and trails technician positions to a trail coordinator. Remove an existing annual 4-month contract position within the trails maintenance budget. And then, and most but not least, the Public Works will have the responsibility of the county trail system and the area weed inspector that is currently held by myself as the Director of Development and Property. And again, the background to this is an opportunity. So with me being hired as the Director of Development and Property, this created an opportunity to, again, what I mentioned before, is to implement a number of items that was highlighted in the Strategy Corp service delivery review in 2020. And during that lengthy document that was presented and approved by County Council, a number of items were highlighted within that document, including the reduction into the number of management positions within D&P from 4 to 3. It did talk about increasing the county forester in a more strategic role within the department, and also discussed within the service delivery review the transfer of trail maintenance, the trail build to Public Works. So with this opportunity, we can implement the Strategy Court recommendations. And just to give a brief background when we move forward, so when we created this division in end of 2013, 2014, trails was not a big thing. We had 21 kilometers of the K&P Trail. We created a position called the Forestry and Trail Technician position, 50% trails, 50% forestry. Since the acquisition of the Algonquin Trail, it's now in reality, it's a full-time trails position. With the full-time trail position, now more and more, again, I'm going to say maintenance work for forestry is now landing on the county forester. That's reduced her ability to do what she needs to do as a county forester. So the position of the forestry trail position has really morphed from 2016. The pressure is now on to continue the trail build from Chalk River all the way to Mattawa. And so what we proposed here to transfer the maintenance and the build to Public Works, they have the additional expertise. They have the assets of the graders and the diggers and things like that to help with the trail build. And they have the overall staff maintenance to support this. Moving back to the forestry section, where in the previous history of this forestry division, there was always 2 individuals. With this half individual now being really dedicated to the trails, more and more stress is being added on to the county forester and not meeting some of the needs we need to have at the county forestry level. So that's why we're proposing a dedicated forestry technician position to support our forestry division. And you saw in the 2023, and you'll see in a closed session, our projects are getting bigger and bigger and more complex within the forestry world. Whether it's a land claim, cell towers, outreach and education, we need that additional support on top of our day-to-day maintenance of our county forests. And first and last but not least is the GIS section. So if you recall, when I was first hired here at the County of Renfrew in 2021, we always had a dedicated 2-person GIS team here at the County of Renfrew. And throughout the years, we've been doing more with less. I've been doing less and less GIS. We have 1 person trying to implement all the county stressors for GIS, the maintaining of the corporate data sets, doing the special projects, and now, least but not least, the implementation of the ESRI Enterprise License Agreement, not only to our own internal staff, but to your local municipal staff. So we do need additional support. On top of that is the planning requirements. When we have more planning files, we have more maps. So that's why you saw in the last slide deck a GIS planning position to move forward within this recommendation. And the financial implications of this, again, a lot of moving parts, but essentially it's going to cost the County of Renfrew $465. Because we're removing the manager of forestry in GIS and adding those additional staff, there's minimal, almost zero impact financially to this, but we're gaining more staff. I do want to highlight, though, to keep that trails coordinator position, we did have to eat into or move some of the trail maintenance to top that up, which I talked about during the budget review. And you see that here of $29,000 being removed from the trail maintenance budget to top up the new trail maintenance person moving forward. And Chair, I'll kind of leave it at that. It is a high level. The package you see there on page 137 and 142 for further review, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Jason. So you've heard the restructuring business case. Can I get a mover and a seconder on further recommendation? Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Watt. Comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Please go ahead, Mr. Davis.
I do believe this is the last item for the open section, and I apologize for the length of the committee package, but it needs to be done. Item number 11 is just a business case for the Planning Division, and again, I'll read the recommendation that the Development and Property Committee supports the reinstating a senior planner position, Group 8, and removing one county planner position, Group 7, within the Development and Property Department, and further that this be forwarded to the February 22nd, 2023 County Council Budget Workshop for approval. So what you see on page 143 and 144 of your committee package is the recommendation, again, to have a better understanding moving the planning files forward. In the past, in the history, we always had a senior planner position. It's unclear why that kind of fell off the plate, but we're looking to increase one position of the county planner into a senior planner position with an additional cost to the budget of $9,000. Again, we're looking to cover those costs within higher planning fees. But again, this will help within our succession planning process, which we just talked about during the budget review. This will help with staff retention as we see this next level of planning services or planning position will be achievable for the planning staff. So people will come in as a junior planner and hopefully a county planner, senior planner, then eventually to the manager of planning services as we move this forward. So minimal budget expense because we're looking to increase our planning fees to cover this cost. Again, the increased roles of a senior planner position will actually give more time to the manager of planning services because the senior planner will have the authority to sign off on certain files. It'll create more opportunities for county planners and a benefit for the county overall. And we'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You've heard the recommendation. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Weir, seconded by Councillor Service. Comments, questions? Councillor Service.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Jason. I saved this for the second part, but it kind of pertains to both of your little reports here. I just want a basic understanding. You don't have to get into too much detail, but obviously there's a lot of moving pieces here, and some of it will involve actual human beings. So I'm just wondering if some of these positions will be just internal shuffling. Are there internal postings, external postings? And has it affected anybody's salary level, up, down, things staying the same?
If I may, Chair, through you, a number of questions within your overall question. So the first business case, which I talked about for the restructuring, so yes, there'll be current staff, the GIS technician position will be moving up in a salary grid. The current forestry and trail technician position to be converted to a trail coordinator position will be moving up in a grid. And then for the proposed senior planner position is still to be decided if it's going to be internal or external. So that's hopefully answers that in a nutshell.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. So now we'll go back to, I need a mover and a seconder to accept the committee report as a whole. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Lynch. Any comments, questions on the report as a whole? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. We'll do new business, and then we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break before we get into closed. Is there any new business? Councillor Lynch?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate what the warden had to say, we were part of the Renfrew County Correction, the Ontario Winter Games, and I'd like to recognize Evelyn was part of the crew that was working on Sunday that we seen that made our Washu a success. So thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you for that. Is there, Warden?
Thank you. I want to take an opportunity just to respond to earlier comments this morning. It was 800 plus days since I was asked to assist our volunteers, and I greatly appreciate that opportunity. It was one of the most interesting things I've ever done. I'd like to thank our many volunteers and sponsors, and our games organizing committee who spent tens of thousands of hours working since December of 2020. They worked very hard to put together an infrastructure stretched over 7,700 square kilometers in 9 different communities, 20 different venues. We organized cross-country skiing in a municipal park, used different venues across the county and into Ottawa that had never been used before. It was quite a biathlon trail on a golf course. All things that if you told us that in 2020, I think most of us would have ran from the room and said, "I'll get back to you." So it was quite a journey, and I certainly appreciate the flexibility of everybody and the willingness to try something new and exciting. I'd also like to thank the County of Renfrew staff for their support. As Craig mentioned, it was behind the scenes getting this to the point where we could hold the games. But in the lead up the last year and the lead up, the resources and the advice and the time and their own personal influence within their communities to be able to access volunteers and other services as needed was greatly appreciated. And I don't think you can put a value on that. That's unfortunate, other than to say thank you for that. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. We'll get you some pretty impressive numbers in the next few weeks. We're still totaling up what our sponsorship numbers were, but initially, I think the initial application suggested 25 or 50,000 in sponsorship. I arbitrarily raised that number to 400,000. I think you'll be shocked when you see the final number that walks through the door between actual cash and goods in kind, or goods and services. Very impressive. I know the ministry was quite shocked by it. I know internally we were shocked by it, the group that worked on it. And our various venues, our partners, our municipal partners and our other partners, excellent venues. Your staff were just so accommodating. And I'd like to thank the athletes and the coaches and the officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. And I know in some of my conversations with Director Davis, you always know it's a success when you don't hear about all the stuff that had to happen behind the scenes to make it happen. And I know there were certainly some tense moments, especially with credit cards that Mr. Davis referred to, where you just squeaked through to make things happen. So again, thank you to everybody. So we will take if we can get back here at 11:45, if you want to count me out, Sean, and we'll continue in closed when we get back. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. And I will now need a mover and a seconder to move into closed. Moved by Councillor Watts, seconded by Councillor Bennett. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you and welcome back, everybody. So we are now back in open, and I will turn it over to Mr. Davis to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. And so the recommendation that the Development and Property recommends that County Council direct staff and the warden as recommended in closed session report item 1.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Weir, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All in favor? And that's carried. Mr. Davis, the next one.
Second item, Chair, is under bylaws, the wireless radio communication tower, Renfrew County Forest, and the recommendation being that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council pass a bylaw to execute an agreement with Rogers Telecommunication Corp. To erect a 90-meter wireless radio communication tower on the County of Renfrew-owned property, the Little Ireland Tract, located at Highway 28 and Little Ireland Road in the township of Brudenell, Lindock, and Raglan.
Thank you very much. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Service, seconded by Councillor Watts. All in favor? And that's carried. So the date of the next meeting will be Tuesday, February the 14th, and I will need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Tuesday, March 14th.
Sorry, it's March 7th.
Tuesday, March 7th. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Weir, seconded by Councillor Lynch. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.